Welcome back to episode 31 of Wixo. This is recorded right after it because I look the same. So we're just gonna hop on into it. World War One is gonna get bananas in here. Okay, or not? I don't know. I'm gonna turn the alliance layer off. This is the ideology one. They kind of intersect. Let's just get on into it. So, heading back to the heat of combat up in the Middle East. Rome is fighting against... Oh, I just realized I'm on the wrong layer. They're fighting the old empire. Their forces are going to continue moving. Whoa, why didn't it? Oh, it's because I didn't select the right color. They're going to keep on moving into this Middle Eastern area, trying to focus on capturing the entirety of the Red Sea, effectively controlling trade. So, their forces are going to attack the old empire and punt at the same time, pushing them back here, taking 3 major cities, as well as these 3 major cities in the old empire. However, part of the old empire's lackluster performance here can be attributed to the new threat on their eastern border as the Persians begin to advance into their territory. And this territory is far more important to them as it is very close to their capital city. So as they move in, backed by India obviously, they're going to have to stop, which is okay because they're going to take a quick side quest and start pushing into Caspia, into their southernmost areas, which is most rude. India directly will also begin seizing land from the Caspians, capturing 5 major cities in like a week. And they'll just keep on pushing in, really flexing their muscles. Big India. Throwing hands. Up here in the north, the Chinese will continue their advance into Estonian land. This is so far from Estonia. The fact that they control it in the first place is kind of funky, and they're going to only make it worse. As over here in this area of the country, they're going to send out a spearhead. Not that many troops, but well coordinated. They push through and capture these 2 major cities up in the north, which kind of gives the territory a roof, as they can conquer from the north and then just push down into warmer pastures. They push down here, capturing these rural areas, and then their forces in the south will kind of spearhead in the middle here, capturing a collection of major cities that amounts to 4. Make it 6 actually, as they just continue to devastate these 2 countries in the name of conquering all this land. Now Tibet is an interesting one. They're not quite square Sahara where they're like uninvadable, but they are Himalayans, so that really throws a damper on any invasion plans. They're a big peace monger though, so they're quite chill. They're not trying to throw any hands. Everybody likes them for the most part. China has their problems, but they're good. Over here, China's gonna keep on moving. They pretty much capture these 2 major cities in Estonia, and from here, the entire area falls. And kind of a similar thing over here. They kind of set their front line by capturing these 3 major cities, and then they push into these rural areas down to the border of Tibet, into the mountains. And this is the new front line. They capture these 3 major cities, push the front line a little bit. We'll set their front line temporarily here, but just know the Chinese military is blitzing through this area. They are starting to get a little far from China though, so that is to be noted, but that's nothing like their distance from Estonia. So let's get to other parts of the world, like Japan. China has been very preoccupied with their Estonian skirmishes, which is leading to Japan pushing them back navally. Now, while this does frustrate the absolute crap out of China, they believe in the long run it'll make them more powerful and able to stop Japan. To be fair, Japan's a top 10 power, and they often are very good at sizing themselves up and skirmishing with the second strongest country in the world. China is stronger. They're of the belief is that they can maybe get to number one and elevate themselves. They can eventually subdue their enemy. But that day will not be today, as Japan will make a few naval shenanigans. I don't know what the word is. And they will be able to capture a strand of these islands up here, putting them in potential range to make a naval landing over here in the Kamchatka Peninsula, which China does control, not well. But in addition, they will be able to push some boats through and make two separate landings on Sakhalin, or Sakhalin, I've heard it called different things, threatening these cities, and they will be able to capture one of them. This one's way bigger and holds off much harder, but they do capture one of them. And over here, they still have all the naval hoopla going on, but Japan's starting to make some gains, so China might want to be careful. You know, I don't want to lose to Japan. Now, getting over here to Africa, where the things are starting to get a little intense. We're gonna see the first of the war with the Green Team and Angola against East Africa. Starting with the Green Team. They are gonna start moving into this green country, and they do it with disturbing speed. They wipe out several major cities, including these two up here, pushing up against the border of Victoria, where they will also begin a front line, capturing this major city and then these three along the border of Ethiopia, where they will begin a just straight up high scale invasion. This is the flatter, more like tropical, quote unquote, not tropical, that's the wrong word, jungle areas, and they will capture all 5 of these cities near their border, which is kind of relative, but you know, but they are just delivering blow after blow to East Africa. The West African country is very strong. In fact, they're probably the 7th strongest in the world. I would say, like, I should do a little power rankings again, but Burma Siam's the 6th strongest country in the world. West Africa's 7th. Japan's probably 8th. I don't know who 9 would be. Probably Ream. 10th is like... Honestly, I have no clue. Who would be 10th? Punt. Punt would be 10th. But you know, they also have a tendency to play up. They were once way stronger than 10th. Over here in the northern of Europe, Austria-Hungary, obviously funded by Rome, is gonna start an attack right here in Denmark. They were collaborating with them, but they're pushing back. They're pushing back in Denmark. And they take several major cities before they begin to threaten capital Denmark. So Austria-Hungary is going to do something interesting, where they're like, hey, what if we did like a little Prussia thing, and we were to negotiate them potentially coming back in Denmark if they're willing to surrender some of their land to us. And Rome is like, hell no, do not do that. What is wrong with you? And Austria-Hungary is kind of just like, oh, I'm gonna do that anyways, which begins to get Rome all sorts of riled up. They're like, no, this is gonna create a domino effect, and you're gonna lose control of like half of Northern Europe. In fact, areas will probably defect to Prussia because they like Prussia, and we're going to lose our whole grip on this war and get our ass beat. And Austria-Hungary's like, oh, such a drama queen, that would never happen. It remains to be seen whether that'll happen, but Austria-Hungary does concede the north of Denmark to Prussia, this much, and they're like, hey, beat up Estonia. And Prussia will do that. They'll take back their island, and they'll take back Copenhagen Island. I don't know if the island has a name. I just call it Copenhagen. They take it back, and from here they begin their assault into mainland Sweden. Meanwhile, Estonia's like, okay, you can do that. We're going to send our forces primarily down here into your mainland. And they begin pushing in. They push around their good friend Belarus, capturing a couple cities, kind of encircling them. Not because they plan on invading them, but they're just like giving them a big hug, as good friends do. But they take back Poland's capital city, which is only still up because the war's still going on. It's gonna be a long one. They're just rocketing through this area, and they're starting to near the capital of Hungary, which is throwing off some red alerts in Austria-Hungary. Bohemia's fine, but like this is a big area. You don't want to lose that. Also over here, Estonia will just cruise right on through Ukraine. They'll capture the capital over the river, and they'll actually push around and completely cut them off from the Black Sea. And Austria-Hungary is kind of on the fraud watch, and I'll explain why in just a second. They are capturing huge swaths of land, and they're not getting as much help from the Romans, particularly because of their decision to bring Prussia back, give them the old resurrection. But they're focusing their troops in a different part of the world, which I'll get to in just a second. Water. Romania's got to be scared again too, because they're like, oh shit, more military activity on our border. Estonia, this can't be good. However, Estonia doesn't have any plans. They're not even thinking about that. Austria-Hungary will try to push back a little bit, especially towards their capital in Hungary. They'll capture this major city, and they'll just kind of give themselves a little bit of a cushion. Also, Estonia will send more forces down into South Sweden to vanquish the invading Danish-Prussian forces. And they will do so. Now, getting over to Rome and Rheims, they are up to no good in other parts of the world, mainly the old empire. They're sending forces up here into kind of Syria and modern-day Israel. They are pushing in, they capture this major city, and stick to the Mediterranean. They are trying to kick them out of the Mediterranean. Definitely a big feat to try and accomplish. They capture this major city, and they begin pushing up into Syria, wiping out these four, and they are starting to near territory they have never held before. They'll launch a naval invasion and capture Cyprus, and it's very clear that the Roman navy is just outclassing the crap out of the old Imperial navy. And then they get a devious idea. It's actually Bulgaria's idea. Bulgaria's a pretty good friend, naval deviousness, but they invade this remaining chunk, putting them at odds with the old empire here in the Turkish Straits, and they have an idea. They're like, hey, Rome, look, we were friends with Olympia, and they double-crossed us, and then we invaded them. What if we try to bring back Anatolia and start some, Anatolian revolutions in Turkey? Because Turkey is a big part of the old empire's power, and losing that, because you can kind of see the way they go. They flow along this river, the Euphrates and Tigris. I don't know how you say it. Those rivers flow through up here, and that's kind of how they funnel a lot of resources. Turkey, going down here into like Iraq and obviously their capital and then Arabian coast, is where a lot of their power comes from. If we get all of this to rebel from them, they are going to be super weak. They are probably going to tumble down the top 10, probably to a level near where Punt's at. If we can do that, we will ruin them, and then our only worries are like Estonia. We'll win this war if we can do that. So Rome is like, okay, I like your thinking. Let's do it. So they're going to start, and they're going to start with roads. They put a little money up in here to some not so savory, not so pro old empire groups, and sure enough, up in the south here, the entire area rises up in rebellion against the old empire. Woohoo! Big win. Rhodes. And Rhodes is very pro-Rome as a result. They're like, yo, Rome's the best. And meanwhile, Mesopotamia is screaming in pain and sending forces in large droves. They are going to be able to push back the Romans a little bit in this area, particularly in the inland areas. However, they're obviously holding onto the coast with a bit of an iron fist. So, that's not great. However, they'll do a little tomfoolery. Over here in the west, they do that. And then it comes to sending the forces up to Bulgaria and bringing back North Anatolia. And they do so. And North Anatolia is very happy to have their own control over the straits, the Turkish straits. And they're like, hey, we helped you open them up. And Anatolia's like, I don't think so. And Bulgaria's like, you don't think so? We will destroy you. What do you mean you don't think so? We'll obliterate you. And Anatolia's like, nah. And so they're like, you know what? We're not funding you anymore. Cut off all funding. And Anatolia's like, you put us into motion. The old empire can't hold on to all of Anatolia. It's all going to fall back to us. You want to cut off funding to us, that's fine, but you can't stop this train. It's already in motion. And indeed, North Anatolia is in full motion, and it becomes a massive sweep through the Turkish peninsula, which does weaken the old empire, but it gives life to an old enemy, an ancient enemy. And just like that, guess who's back? It's North Anatolia, and they have quite a bone to pick with the Romans. So Rhodes is kind of doing their thing. They're back. Woohoo! Yay! They're kind of pro-Rome, but not to the point where they're gonna help them or anything. They're focusing on themselves. And in the end, their existence, and I guess by proxy, North Anatolia's existence, does do a thing where it does weaken the old empire considerably. But it doesn't weaken them as much as they thought. And it kind of pushes old Empyrean forces in a different direction, which is forcing them kind of just to stop, like, they pretty much surrendered the Mediterranean. And they're now putting forces back over here in the east towards their capital to try and defend it from Persia, which they actually will do somewhat successfully. They'll take out 4 major cities and push the front lines farther away from their city. However, this is the 20s, and technology has evolved where bombs exist, so there's a lot of bombing campaigns going on in various parts of the world, including in East Old Empyrean areas. Ooh, talking a lot makes my vocal cords sting. Also, OBS is not showing me anything. Okay, so we're still good. I look so chopped right now. Okay, whatever. We're going back to mapping. Now, there's a couple parts of the world I haven't touched on, and that's North America and South America, which we'll get to starting now. Now, Prussia's colony being gone, they are back now, but they're not, like, back. I'll explain in a minute. Their colony's still was getting invaded, and the old empire namely took advantage of this, taking everything west of the Hudson, sweeping over here into the, I don't know what this area is called, but they take all of it. They take pretty much everything surrounding the Great Lakes. Anything that was surrounding the good old Great Lakes was theirs. So they took quite a lot of land from Prussia's colony up here in the north. And they will take more, but we'll get to that in a minute. Up here in the north, there is some semblance of defense up here in New England's coastline. However, up in the northern areas, they'll take this and pretty much have full control over the Hudson River. Doing a lot for them. Or is that this is St. Lawrence River. I think. I don't know. Should be better at this. Now over here in California, Nebraska, you know, these guys aren't really throwing the most punches. They're going to send some forces down to fight Cambodia. Now Cambodia will be able to start moving in to the Floridian area with hopes of capturing a lot of land. However, they aren't able to take this major city. They also don't move into Prussia. They're like, that's not ours to take. However, instead they start a whole war. And once Nebraska and California jump into the fray, oh nah, they're cooked. They lose this major city and a decent chunk of Great Plains lands as they begin having to reroute a bunch of troops, especially since California's military is built to whoop them. They move out here kind of into the more deserty areas. Move out here into like Sonoran Desert, capturing city after city. Over here in the coastline of like the Gulf of California, they'll pretty much take every settlement along this area and they'll wipe out several major cities before kind of slowing a little bit. Give it a big slap in the face, right? Just massive slap in the face. They will begin moving more forces over here into Florida, and this is where the majority of the front line will be. In Central America, these areas are pretty hard anchored. These areas are very like, there's some skirmishes happening, but to be fair, these areas are very peaceful and chill, and they're also very well settled. These borders are very hard set. It's kind of hard to invade over here. There is some stuff going on in like the Yucatan, as the West Africans are able to take a little more land from good old Cambodia. However, it's nothing insane. Their gains are nothing bananas, and most of the fighting is going on over here in Florida and against California and Nebraska with support from Cascadia and Alberta. Now, all of West Africa is able to fight back and take back this land, capturing this, and now we get down here to Louisiana and New Orleans. They sweep across, capturing a crapload of major settlements along the Mississippi River before sweeping down into Louisiana and having a hell of a battle over here. We'll talk about this in a minute, but first we'll move up, and they were one of the powers up in here, stealing land from the former Prussian states. They in particular move over here, but however, Rome will stop them after they take this major city and be like, you know what, actually I don't like that border, hold up, something like this. They're like, hold up now, we could take all this land, but we know we can't hold on to all of it. We're already kind of at our breaking points in some ways. What if we start to release certain areas and certain states within it? And so the green team's like, okay, what do you have imagined? They're like, I see 1, 2, 3 big states that we can release from this. And so the green team's like, you know what, I like it, especially if we could get one of these states to fight Cambodia. And so Rome's like, okay, you know what, whatever, who cares? And so I gotta find some new colors. We're making new states. Let's get like a gunky green. I kind of like that. Okay. Going up here into New England, we will see the first new state. Up here, we see Connecticut. Greater Connecticut. The Connecticut country will be released. You know what, they'll get all this land too. Something like this. Connecticut. Highly populated. Pretty powerful. Up here, Rome's greed. They'll take more land over here from in the Midwest. Particularly over here in Illinois and Indiana. Right there. They'll even take these two major cities in modern-day Ohio. And all of this land, Rome will commandeer. And then the rest of it's going over to two new countries. Let's get like a green that's verdant, but like verdant in a different way. Yeah, there we go. That's like a verdant that really stands out from the West African colony. This is the verdant green of, I don't know whether to call them Tennessee or Appalachia. Oh, we'll call them Tennessee. So the new Tennessee country. It's happening, gang. New countries in North America. Peak DLC. You know what? We'll actually kind of make it Appalachia. We'll do something like that. This is all its own state. And then over here, we're going to see the great state of Atlanta. I guess this is like Atlantics. This is like Carolina, Virginia. We'll just call it Carolina. What color works for Carolina? I'm thinking like a softer blue, you know, like a, not too light, but you know, something like this I could see working. Like, yeah, okay. Oh, this one's still okay. So looking good up in here. 3 new states out of Prussia's colony, which they can't hold on to. They'd be mad about it if they truly existed. They mean they do exist, but like this colony's not coming back. They have gotten their first breaths of independence and they ain't coming back. Over here, Rome is like, I'm having a fit. I wish I could turn my camera around. You can see this bananas behavior. You want to come on camera, Derek?
No.
So, going in, Nebraioa is a fan of these Tennessee states. To the Tennessee state, the Appalachia, Tennessee. Actually, I could divide it into 2. I won't do that, but I could. So, Tennessee exists, and oh yeah, New Orleans. Going into New Orleans. It's a hard-fought battle, but eventually the West Africans will win out very definitively, kind of setting in the idea that, yeah, Cambodia's not going to be able to win up here in like North America. They're probably going to lose all this. So Rome is like, hey, remember what you were saying about getting one of the states to join in on the war? Since Tennessee doesn't want to, Rome offers to send a bunch of money and resources over here into the Gulf of Mexico, right along here, to potentially get a new state to rebel. And that is exactly what they do. And sure enough, I don't want this color to look like Caucasia. I kind of want to see what this color looks like painted over other red countries on the map. I mean, there's not a whole lot of red, but is this the same color as Caucasia? Caucasia is a little browner. Oh, it's very close. Maybe if I make it like that. Okay, that's good, but it's kind of the same color as... Gosh, the red's hard to do, honestly. What if it's like a super dark red, like a... something like that? Even darker. That could work. Zooming out, I don't think there's any countries that are like that shade of red. Yeah, I think that's what we'll go with. So over here, we see a new country forming. Although it's honestly so dark, it kind of looks brown now. So let's just do like a, you know what, that'll have to do. Alright, there we go. It's Texas. Texas is rebelling from Cambodia, and they're being aided by the West Africans and the Romans. All this land over here along their border defects, and soon it becomes a very big domino effect where Cambodia is going to lose control of most of this land. Major city after major city is overrun by an army of angry Texans. Eventually, the forces slow down a little bit after taking these two cities over here in the south, and up here in the north, these two cities along the border of Nabraiawa. They take this city too, and these two. From here, the front kind of stalls a little bit, you know. They're starting to advance into territory that isn't necessarily core Texan, but still has a decent number of pro-Texan forces. This is where we see California kind of jump back in here. Their forces are mostly concentrated in the west coast, but they do take the time to move a little bit inland, capturing these two major cities, and just really making a name for themselves. They captured two more over here, and they're kind of putting like this pincher point over here in this inland area. They capture this major city as kind of a side quest and push towards the coast, taking these two coastal cities, and from here these three cities in the center are encircled, and the entire area will fall under Californian occupation. Shortly after, Nabraiawa will reignite their war effort into Cambodia, capturing the two major cities nearest their border. As Cambodia seems to fall further and further into chaos, they'll gladly take some of the Great Plains land. They're honestly good friends with Texas, you know. They're ideologically, they kind of sit in the same area. Texas will continue pushing along the Nabraiawan border, you know. They're very close. Nabraiawa's kind of helping, and plus they don't want to get too big for their britches and fall apart, so they spend most of their military efforts assisting Texas in its quote independence. They'll take all this land here, go into the center and take this major city too. It's all going good for them, you know. Meanwhile, Cambodia is having a nightmare. They're like getting beaten up from every which angle. They have West Africans taking their land, Nabraiawa, California, Texas. There's two more countries that don't even border them and are just sending forces in. Cambodia has all the ops for, quote, throwing the continent into turmoil. And ironically, everyone's just punching them in the face. So really, who started it? California. Going south here, Rome's not really Rome doesn't want to start a mess in South America. However, there is a colony down here that they have interest in, and that's Olympia's. Not a ton of interest, but they are going to reach down here into the south part of the country, taking these two major cities. And their idea is that they could just capitulate the colony in like a day. not a day, but like it would be like a month-long excursion, you know, into Chile and wipe out the colony. It doesn't really go like that, especially since there are other countries they're actually at war at that are in the area, as well as countries that just kind of like North America want peace and are a little more dedicated to the cause than the North Americans seemingly were. So they're going to just kind of move up here into the northern parts of the country, just take the land, and try to minimize any fighting going on in this continent. Punt will also kind of do the same. They'll move in here, they'll capture this land, they'll push in here, although push is a relatively incorrect term. They kind of walk in. Olympia's colony / I guess the remainder of Olympia knows it can't stand on its own 2 feet, so they're allowing certain countries to move in exchange for probably economic benefits. So over here, Madagascar will take control of a lot of this eastern part of the colony. Madagascar's colony is doing very well, so a good chunk of this land is very happy to go over to them. Over here in the west part, Mozambique will take control of these two major cities as well as a bit in here. And it's looking good. I'm gonna change the border here. I don't like the way it looks. Yeah. Actually, I'll give this major city also to Mozambique. Madagascar is an island, tiny little island after all. So we'll do something like that. Actually, I really don't like the way that looks. So I'm gonna do that too. There we go. So I guess Madagascar colony didn't do as much as I thought, but you know, whatever. Chile. They're very long. They'll move in here. They'll take this major city, and they'll kind of try to take as much borderland as they possibly can. You know, they don't want to see Rome and Punt fighting on their border. That would be a nightmare. So while the while Rome moves in here and captures this major city and reaches the border of Punt, Chile will bring Rome, Punt, and Mozambique together in a room and be like, let's not fight in this part of the world. We're all about peace. Don't throw this into turmoil. And Rome's kind of like, no, I don't really feel like listening to you. I'm going to start invading into Mozambique. And Chile is like, if, like, Rome does start invading into Mozambique, and then Mozambique starts fighting back, and sensing the entire continent's about to go into a mess, go to high hell, Chile gets their friends into a room, right? Bolivia, Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and says, Rome, you can have your colonies. If you keep invading into this continent, we will declare war on you and wipe you off the continent. We know you're strong, but if we really got together and teamed up with Old Empire and Estonia, we would beat the crap out of you. And so Rome's kind of just like, they're mad. They don't like South America, but they will acquiesce and stop fighting. Plus, if they want to invade Mozambique, they could just do it. They could just send their forces in manually and wipe them out. However, they don't really care that much. That's not their biggest priority at the moment. The biggest priority is up here in the Middle East and dealing with North Anatolia refusing to open the straits despite the fact that they funded their independence movement. The Old Empire will stop Rhodes from expanding, kind of because they don't want them to develop the same ideology, but they weren't going to. They're paranoid. They continue moving in up here into the northern parts of the Middle East to like Syrian territory. They capture these major cities. From here, the Old Empire is kind of just trying to set up a defensive over here. They've lost a lot of territory to Rome, and it'll probably only get worse. Meanwhile, Punt in the mainland is doing a good job at pushing back the Romans. Their claims in the area are not as stable as they once thought. They take back these three major cities and continue their push back up over the continent. They take this major city, and from here, Punt has kind of reached the golden area where all the haps is going on, you know. Okay, so Ethiopia is going to continue moving along the Nile River. Kind of gets intersected by the Punt claim, but that's okay. The two are friends. They can sort it out. They push up, capture these two major cities, and Rome is beginning to lose land along the Nile River. They're losing out big time to these two guys that are making pushes into their land. It's kind of at this point that the world's starting to think like, is Rome on the fraud watch? Are they not number one? I thought they were number one. They certainly aren't acting like number one. What's the matter? You can't fight this world war? Can't beat up everyone at the same time? Yeah, no, it's Rome's doing good, but they're not doing good enough. They're not really throwing their weight around as the number one most powerful country in the world. And the ethos around them in the world is starting to wane. And this will increase with a prediction of theirs becoming right. Austria-Hungary was not right to liberate Danish Prussia, because bit by bit revolutions are going to start happening across their land. Up here in the north, a large chunk of pro-Prussian forces in lands that weren't even necessarily Prussia are going to start happening. Lands across the entire northern area here, going into where the lowlands were and where France used to be. And eventually the capital of the lowland country straight up joins this conglomeration, this pro-Prussian revolution. And at this point, Austria-Hungary is beginning to spiral out. Despite Roman economic assistance, they are losing control. Rome is overexerted. It is sending forces into Europe to try and stop Estonia. Not Prussia, Estonia. They're sending forces into the Middle East. They're trying to push navally through the Turkish Straits. They're sending forces across the world into North America to friggin' situate their colony down here, They've moved most of those forces to Africa, but still, they are not able to keep themselves in check. They are overexerted, and if they don't fix something quick, they're going to lose this war, and they're going to lose Austria-Hungary. And so as they attempt to divert Austro-Hungarian forces to combat the Prussians, over here in the south especially near Austria, it's one step forward, but like they keep losing because Estonia is now moving in. They're moving in fast into these core European territories, and they will capture more and more land, especially near Hungary, a core part of them. So they're doing all right. However, in the east, they're not. Remember China and Japan? That was a fun skirmish. China's movement into this country has slowed, mainly due to distance. However, they are still able to capture this entire area of this tan country. It is very weak. They are not very strong at all. They will capture this major city and this major city in Estonia, these two. However, these areas are very rural, and generally they just can't hold on to all of this. They are the most powerful country in the world in some eyes, as Rome's ethos is fading. They're not fully widely recognized yet as that. I mean, most people still consider Rome. They're just on the fraud watch. They'll capture this major city, and just, it's not enough. It's too far. It's simply too far. China will slow down and attempt to reroute some forces back in East Asia, because Japan just did something. As per usual, they did something. They've moved forces up into Sakhalin. Whoa, what the hell? That's weird. Okay, there we go. Weird discoloration. But they've moved forces into Sakhalin, and as they've done so, they've begun to sweep through the area. They've begun to take the island, while China was distracted fighting Estonia and dealing with long-range areas, trying to garrison long-range areas. They've lost control of Sakhalin. A large chunk of Sakhalin falls under Japanese control. Insane. China will send forces back to pretty much re-secure the island, and they'll do that pretty successfully. However, they are unable to break through these two cities right here, and Japan has punched once again way above their weight class, especially over here as they make a naval landing first in these two islands and then in Kamchatka, capturing this island. They take some land, but it's not very valuable land. It's just kind of for naval purposes, and China doesn't even really care there. It's too cold. Most of their conflicts are regarding the Navy, and now Japan is beginning to spend some forces trying to achieve the ultimate naval landing right here in Korea, which would be a major situation should that fall through. Will it? Who knows? Who knows? So, let's move over here to Africa. This will be the final part of this episode of The War. It's still going on after this episode. Green Team, they're a pretty formidable power. A lot of their forces have been going to North America to beat up Cambodia, but they stand tall on their own, and they've been pushing deep into Africa to the point where they've been able to wipe out this green country almost completely and push into Victoria, reaching these several cities along their border. As for Angola, who I didn't mean to color this south part of the country, and Angola gets that, they've been invading into this country, albeit slowly and tediously. It is not going well. Most of the former Angolan areas don't want to be Angolan anymore. Surprise. And then their forces over here in Zimbabwe are slow. Where forces aren't slow is Namibia, as they will begin pushing over here into South Africa, into these 5 cities, taking control of all of them, and sensing the nightmare unfolding, Madagascar will pretty much try to pull as much of everything as they can out of South Africa and back into the mainland, because a battalion of Chinese forces just arrived. And as the Chinese forces arrive and begin fighting, Madagascar is kind of like, oh, this is not as much effort as we thought the second most powerful country in the world would put towards us. What if instead of evacuating everybody from the area, we just fought them head on? And same with Namibia. And they begin to do very well. They take 2 major cities, extend their rural areas up in the north, and then capture this one. And China's colony in South Africa is doing pretty badly. They're not able to fight back. And Namibia's forces are mostly focused on fighting Zimbabwe, who's giving them a run for their money here. They're fighting back, they're doing damage, and then as soon as they do that, they get pushed back to their border. And the front line stagnates in Namibia. They're not able to do much here. Angola is trying to do things over here in this country, but they're slow and they seem to be unable to capture any major city whatsoever. Eventually, after a lot of green team forces arrive in the country, they will be able to capture the ones they've been working on along their border. But it is disturbing that it takes a lot of forces from another country to be able to help them. But they are able to, and from here the front line kind of stagnates in the south. Up in the north, green team's still pushing through though. They're fighting into Victoria. They take more land. However, Victoria isn't even necessarily their primary area objective. Their main goals are over here in Africa's more eastward areas in Ethiopia, and so they'll continue their invasion into here. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for the front line here. So, with that, the first episode of World War I concludes with some things happening, you know, fall of the Prussian colony, fall of Prussia in general. Just a lot of stuff happened. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I appreciate
Don't
it.
do it.
Hey, shut up, Derek. You're an op. Don't listen to him. Please subscribe. Pretty please. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. I think this is episode 31. And I will see you later for the next episode, which will still be this war. So, peace. Farewell. Goodbye.